let's get into it. We have 3 segments. I kind of want to run them into each other.
Sure.
It's so funny. We talked about only talking 30 minutes about the Packers game. That didn't happen because we get all riled up.
Strike 3.
Strike 3. So let's call the next segment the future of the Miami Dolphins. We have a lot of stuff that we are going to talk about this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about once the team is officially eliminated.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think it's terrible to start talking about those things now, because I think the powers that be in the Miami Dolphins are starting to talk about those things now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that a lifelong Dolphins fan like Stephen Ross, despite giving both of these guys an extension, is looking at the same thing that we're looking at. Fans tend to think that the owners don't pay attention. I don't know where they get that from.
I don't either.
He very clearly sees that we haven't beat a winning team. Right? Except for if you count the Rams, who are 6-6. Okay.
I don't. But
right? Now, so what are we doing here? Right? What are we doing with the coach? What are we doing with the GM? It's the first time I've seriously, and we talked about this weeks ago, so it's not the first time I saw it, but this is the first season I've thought to myself, I don't know that Mike McDaniel is the guy.
Nope.
To bring us to a championship.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. Look, I mean, I admitted earlier preseason show all throughout the season, I am a Mike McDaniel guy. From a football mind standpoint, I think Mike McDaniel brings so much to the table. And I think, and my argument throughout the first, 2/3 of the season has been he's earned enough real estate or runway, if you will, to see if he can right the ship, right? I mean, you look back at our last 2 seasons. For me, I've been a Dolphins fan since the 80s, right? These have been some of the most fun 2 seasons, not this one. This one's been atrocious, but the 2 seasons prior have been really exciting for being a Dolphins fan, right? Seeing the Tua rehabilitation and getting kind of the right players in and really the run game genius and Mike McDaniel turning into the quick pass Shanahan offense. I mean, it was awesome. And then seeing it all come to fruition last year with beating Denver by 70 something points, averaging on the season 30 plus points a game. I mean, awesome. And then the problem is that defensive coordinators also have jobs, right? Yeah. And their sole responsibility is to study, figure out how to beat you and implement that. And you see other teams making adjustments. And my biggest frustration, Anthony, you and I have had hours of conversations about this. The biggest frustration is we don't seem to make adjustments, not pregame, not during game, not at halftime. It's frustrating because you see a stubborn coaching staff sticking with what they think they should do instead of seeing what the opposition is doing and making adjustments off of it. We know you can do it. We've seen you do it. It's insanely frustrating.
And so much about, coaching and at a level that they're coaching at, right, is you're not just coaching for the now. Like, you need to have the foresight. You need to say, this is what we've been doing. This is what they could potentially deploy that will stop that. So we're going to switch to this. But that's not where it ends. And that's where it seems like it ends for our staff. Because from there, you have to say to yourself, well, if we switch to this, maybe they're thinking of that we're going to switch to this too, and they're making a game plan for that. Like, you need to have 3 plans of action each week to be able to counter whatever they're going to shift to, right? And part of that's not just coaching. Part of it's having the players that understand that. I think that's why, one of the most hated people to a Miami Dolphins fan is Tom Brady. But if you are a football fan, there's no way you could watch this man play and not just appreciate the sheer number of things he was doing on the field, right? Like, now that he's an announcer and he talks about it, now we already got to see it. We played them twice a year. We saw all of this in real time.
I love him as an announcer, man. It was so much fun listening to him.
He's good.
Oh, he's so good.
We'll see if it wears off like it has with Romo, but at least in his first year. But the thing is, though, he talks about, like, it's just seeing the field. I would line up, he says. This is what I would see. I would move A to this, B to this, to take advantage of the fact that they are now playing this to counter us, right? That's what you need. And listen, Tua is picking that up. Yes. Everybody keeps talking about it. Everybody in the beat writers who are talking to the people in the building have mentioned that Tua is doing better at this than he has ever done before. He is reading defenses better than he ever has. He's making adjustments better than he ever has. But it's still not at the level that it needs to be. I saw him twice in this Packers game, audible to a run that was then absolutely exploded upon in the backfield. Yep. Why are you audibling to a run? The only reason I could think of is that you see them in a pass defense formation that you think you can exploit. And that tells me that you misread that defense twice now on these audibles. So, like, it's a whole organization thing when it comes to the coaching. And I know, like, everybody always wants to pin one person on it because that's the head coach, right?
Dude, you're the CEO.
You need to have everybody else prepared. You need to have Tua seeing what you're seeing. And he needs to have his receiver seeing what he's seeing. And, like, it needs to trickle down, and not just in a funny trickle down economics that never actually works kind of way. In a real football knowledge, everybody's on the same page, so that when Tua walks to that line and he sees a blitz coming from the right, he doesn't even have to tell Jonnu because Jonnu knows, right? Yep. And now he knows, and Tua knows they're on the same page, and Jonnu is going to chip that guy just by instinct because that's what they've practiced, that's what they've reviewed in the film. That's like. It's frustrating because the team is filled with talent.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Everywhere you look, there's talent. Even places we didn't think we had talent. And I don't agree with you at all, true Fin fan. I'm going to throw that up so other people see what I'm talking about. You can't give all the... how are you giving credit for reading the defense of the tight end? That's silly. Okay, taking that away. The point is that we are not getting it done when it matters the most. There's a disconnect somewhere. And that's why it goes back to the head coach, right? It goes back to, is McDaniel making sure that everybody has all the information that they need to have in order to make the adjustments in this game or any game right? and feel empowered to do so?
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting because you can tell. So this team, to me, and I've noticed this specifically in the Mike McDaniel era, is this team, when they do not practice on short week games, when they have short week games, right? I mean, I said it earlier, we're 0-3 on Thursday night games, and we've been almost double lapped on scoring. On short week games, we do not practice. We do walkthroughs. But we do not do full practices. And you can tell this team needs ramp up. This team needed, if you look, we played much better towards the end of the second quarter and into the third. I mean, we still lost, but we were a much better team towards the middle and end of that game than we were to start. Those are the kind of decisions that I question McDaniel on, right?
Yeah.
The fact that you stick with the screen game when you've tried it 5 times in a row and it's gotten us negative 18 yards.
I hate it.
How about you try something else, buddy? I mean, you can go back to it if you need to, but stop running it and stop running the little fades to Tyreek. He's the smallest guy on the field, right? He's dynamic. He's amazing, right? But he's not a 50-50 ball kind of wide receiver. So why are you doing it? And you can tell that Mike McDaniel gets some moments for him get too big for him in a way. And I don't know if that's true or not. That's just from a fan's point of view, from my perspective.
What it looks like. Yeah.
It's what it looks like because you can tell he panics, right? There is no reason we should be running the ball 18 times, whatever it was, 14 times, 12 times in the game only. Like, you have to have a balanced offense because all of our offensive structure is predicated on play action passing. Well, if the defense knows you're not running the ball, they're not going to fall for it. And, you can tell he tries to make it up in one pass instead of letting the game plan and the game structure that you've put into place ebb and flow with the game. He just nixes it all when something goes wrong and then immediately starts throwing the ball down the field like we have Peyton Manning behind the center when we don't,
Yeah. And so the other thing is that like I've been calling for this since we had a backup quarterback in. simplification. And this seems to run not just with Mike McDaniel, but you're seeing it in San Francisco too. Like the overcomplication of the offense when to me, I feel like you only need to do that if you're lacking talent. We're not lacking talent. The only thing we're lacking is getting that talent involved. Why is Jalen Waddle only getting 4 targets a game?
Dude, that's another thing, man. You have 2 wide receivers, right, that are a combined 70 almost $80 million on your cap, and they're averaging 4 targets a game.
And that's why, like, I go back to this, and I best of luck, true Fin fan.
Yes.
But I want to go back to this. This is coming from a place of frustration that our 2 top receivers are not involved, right? And now True Fin fan's been in here talking about having 2 tight ends all year. And listen, I would love it if that actually happened. It just is way more difficult than anything. So, but I see his frustration because the superstars that led Tua to lead the league in passing last year are invisible this year.
I just don't get it. And that's goes back to Mike McDaniel being stubborn with his game plan, because defenses have figured him out. They know to pack the middle of the field and let you beat them long on the outside of the numbers, which we can't do. And
we're not even taking chances, dude.
You know what I mean? And that's where my comment about the Green Bay game, which one of my takeaways was I was envious of how that team was built. And this goes to Chris Grier's problem, which I think, spoiler alert, I'm ready to see Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel gone. I don't know what that means for Tua, but I want to get fresh perspective back into this organization. Spoiler alert. I'm sorry if I jumped the gun on that, but
no, let's slide right into it. Let's slide right into it because we gotta get to the Jets game at some point. So,
I mean, do we really though?
No, but yes, I think some people listening may want to hear about it. You know,
Keith, if you're listening, I apologize.
So I'm glad you brought that up though, because part of me is like, yeah, I want McDaniel gone. The other part of me is like, this is the best version of Tua we've ever seen.
I know, and that's where it's hard. Yeah.
But the problem is that this best version of Tua we've ever seen is so careful with the ball that we have kind of lost what made us so dangerous last year, prior to Thanksgiving last year. What made us so dangerous last year, what made us the most talked about team in all of media last year, was we were taking shots, dude.
Oh, yeah. To the point where we were like, stop taking shots, dude.
We were taking shots on 3rd and 1. It didn't matter.
It didn't make sense.
We were taking shots on shots on shots. We were like a friggin' rapper out there in a club, right? But now that Tua has gotten...
Anthony.
Now that Tua has gotten more football knowledge, has gotten more involved in developing the offense, has gotten better at reading defenses, he has lost that part of him that takes those chances. Yep. Everything he throws is virtually a high percentage throw.
Yeah. There's no urgency to his game, if that makes sense.
Like, I get it. Every team is playing 2 high safeties to stop from getting beat. But on Monday night, we saw Bo Nix throw a ball to Marvin Mims, who had 3 high safeties, and thread the needle.
Yeah. It was a beautiful throw, by the way, for those that haven't seen it.
93 yards for a touchdown. That's why you take the chance. Because that could happen. That could blow the game upside down, right?
Yeah.
And like, we're still seeing his short to middle, what's that called? Intermediate. We're still seeing his short to intermediate game excel. Like it's never excelled before.
Please understand, for those listeners that are here, we're not crapping on Tua.
No. He looks amazing.
He looks awesome this year. But the problem, to your point, Anthony, is that he's lost the edge. The edge where it's like, you know what? No, I'm just gonna bomb it. It's almost like he doesn't trust his receivers, if that makes sense. And I know that's not true. Well, that's fair. And I will say Armstead's probably playing the best ball of his career
Yeah. But I mean, like, look at the Packers game, man. He did not trust who was in there. No. We had some backups in. He was one read, two read, and usually Tua is amazing at getting through all his reads. Mm-hmm. It was one read, two read, let me spin in circles because I can't figure out what I'm doing now.
Yep.
Because somebody's about to annihilate me, right? He was sacked 5 times in this game. Some of them are his fault. But
three on the offensive line, 2 on Tua.
Here's the thing, right? Here is like the cherry on top for the McDaniels Grier argument is let's look at the teams that are dominating the league right now. There are 4 teams, I think, that are playing absolutely dominant football. Mm-hmm. I think that's the Chiefs and the Bills, as usual. And I think that's the Lions and the Eagles.
The Lions, man. Campbell, I'm so happy for him.
So happy for the Lions, right? Do you think this team could beat any of those teams?
No.
I think we get crushed by those teams.
I think it would look like, honestly, starters against starters, everyone healthy. I think we could keep it close with Buffalo. I think we could keep
That's a division game, though.
Right?
Let's take Buffalo out. What about the other 3?
I don't know, man.
I think the Chiefs would have the best bet because they have lucked into some serious wins this year.
Yeah, right. But I think we would get like 70 points laid on us by Detroit, if I'm being honest.
Oh, Detroit and Philadelphia. Either of those teams is absolutely.
I don't know about Philadelphia. I'm not high on Philadelphia this year. I mean, Saquon Barkley is the reason they're winning all these games. Which
we have a run defense that can't stop anybody.
Right.
So, I mean,
wet paper towel, but you know,
he's got to run for 300 on us. So
fair.
Listen. So when I look at McDaniels and Grier, I look at Howie Roseman in Philadelphia.
Oh man, I would love to have him.
No, I'm just so torn, and we're going to talk about this so much, and we're going to move on to the Jets in a second. Anybody who's here for the Jets talk. I'm so torn on what to do with these 2 men because Chris Grier has certainly got to be given credit for putting the amount of talent on this team that's there, right? And we like to say, why didn't you get an offensive line? Dolphins fans in general just love the whole, why didn't you draft an offensive lineman?
Nauseating.
But Grier is the type who works with his coach. If he goes to McDaniel and McDaniel says, or even the offensive line coach is more likely who he's going to. And he goes to the offensive line coach and he says to him, hey, how do you feel about this group?
What do you need? Yeah.
Right. And that offensive line coach says, I feel really good about this group. Like, I don't think you need to, he wouldn't say, I don't think you need to use a first round pick. Chris Grier is not going to ask somebody if he should use a first round pick on an offensive lineman. But like, if he says, yeah, I feel pretty good about it. I think we could use depth here as opposed to, I hate this group. Yeah. I need a starter, right? Like, and then we get to the point where okay. Now we're at the coaching side because he gets Patrick Paul in the second round. He gets Chop Robinson in the first round. This is everything we should want. We get a guy on the one trenches, and then we get a guy in the other trenches, right?
And both who have physical skills out the wazoo, who are specimens. They both look like they've been made in labs for their specific positions. And
I just don't. Yeah, we're going to talk about this so much in the offseason. I don't know what the answer is. Right now, I feel angry because we can't beat a good team.
Yeah.
And I blame everybody for that, right? But at the end of the season, maybe a month after we're through, and we're sitting there thinking about it as we regret watching another Super Bowl that doesn't involve our team for the 400th time. Am I going to feel the same way? Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's a very good question. And I think I tend to tie the head coach and the GM together, which is incorrect. You should never do that. Right. So I always think, okay, well, if I want the head coach gone, that means the GM's gone too, which isn't the case.
I do like to do that though. If you're going to make a cut, make a clean one.
Exactly. Right. Don't cut the tumor off completely. Don't leave any, right. You don't want it to metastasize. Look at that medical term. You're welcome, folks. Oh, look, I slept at a Holiday Inn Express. All right. But honestly, of the 2 men, and I can't believe I'm saying this, if I only could fire one, I think I would lean towards McDaniel right now over Grier. Personally,
I would too, because I don't see the adjustments they need to make.
Not at all. I mean, he is playing the same offense that he played 2 years ago.
Yeah. And nobody's falling for it anymore.
No.
And the 4 games without Tua were an embarrassment.
That was the decision
Yeah.
maker in my mind of the two men.
The fact that you couldn't adjust to that, I think all of us, I think we were all on the same page at that time. We were all like, okay, McDaniel will this is make or break for him.
Yeah.
How does he react to this?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't good.
Yep.
And I think that's
and there were reports that came out. He specifically stopped Chris Grier. They had I don't know how true this is. Obviously, I'm not in the room, but there were numerous conversations about the backup quarterback position.
Mm-hmm.
And for everything that I've read, Mike McDaniel, yep, Skyler's been in my system for 3 years. Go get me Tim Boyle as a backup. We'll be fine. We look like a high school team.
You let Skyler play a half of a game, and then you never put him back in there.
Which I'm happy with. I'm fine. I'd rather play the Wildcat all game than have Skyler Thompson back in there.
I agree, but how do you have so much conviction in the kid for the entire offseason and then only give him a half?
I mean, imagine this team if we had Jameis Winston. He was available.
So many were available.
Right?
So many.
Throwing a name out there, right? Imagine this team with Jameis Winston for those 4 games. You don't think Jameis Winston would bomb it 80 yards to Tyreek Hill?
We would have won at least one of them.
Right? I mean, but those are the decisions. And what's frustrating is, look, you, me, Keith, Steve, we study football. We love it. It's our passion. We follow players out of college. We prep for drafts like we are GMs of teams. Here's the thing, though. We see it. We could tell you that he's not good. And I'm not making your money. I'm not a head coach of a football team. And that's what's troubling to me.
You know what I compare it to, though? And I think the better comparison isn't us on the outside looking in on a team that we love and feeling that we can make those decisions better. We know in reality we can't. Well, most of the time.
I could tell you Skyler Thompson is garbage.
Right.
Pretty confident.
But what I compare it to is like your fantasy team. When you take a guy in the first round and he's trash.
Like Trey McBride.
You will... Let's say... It doesn't matter who it is. If you took that guy in the first round, you are more than likely holding on to him for the whole season.
Yeah.
Right? You're not getting rid of him. And I think that's what the coaches get. They're human too. They're just like us. Yeah. They are like their profession is football. Their specialty is football and ours is not. But they are still human and they still fall for the same crap that we do that. He knows Skyler Thompson, the person. He knows Skyler Thompson, the practice player. He has a special place in his heart for Skyler Thompson. He did not realize that this guy's absolute trash until he threw him into a game. And by that time, it's too late.
Yeah, and that's where I put some blame on both of those men, right? Yeah. I mean, that's Chris Grier. At some point, I get he's a head coach friendly GM, right? And I love that. I genuinely think that's smart. Cool. I mean, buy the groceries for the guy that's making the dinner. Yeah. Don't just hand him a bunch of stuff like, and say, figure it out, stupid. Right. I think at a certain point in certain moments, you are higher on the food chain. You have been in this organization for 16, 17 years. I can't remember how long Chris Grier has been around.
A long time.
At a certain point, you have the clout and you have the title to put your foot down and say, no, I respect your opinion. You can do it tactfully, but we are not going into this with a injury-prone starter who we just paid $250 million to. We are not going into the season with Skyler Thompson. I respectfully disagree with your take on him. I will get you somebody that I think can be a backup, and I'll work with you for it, but it's not going to be him.
Right. You got a Sonny Weaver Jr. That crap right there. You got, let me do my job. You do yours.
I love that.
Yeah. And like that, you are supposed to be the talent evaluator, not your coach. Your coach is supposed to coach the talent.
And he's done a very good, I know he catches flack all the time. I think he's done a pretty damn good job at evaluating talent. Now, he doesn't pick the talent that he evaluates very well, but he's brought in a lot of talented players, both free agents and rookies.
Yep.
Right?
We do really well at UDFAs, man.
Oh, it's amazing.
Really well. Yeah. All right. Speaking of players, though, let's get into a few players before we get into the Jets game that we're dreading talking about anyways because it's the Jets.
Yep. It's going to be a quick show if we're just talking about the Jets. We're going to win.
So realistically, there's nothing we can do about Tua. He signed the contract. You can't get out of that contract.
Well, you can. I did a whole show on it. If anyone wants to go watch it.
That's true. You did.
Yeah. We can get out of it this year.
Okay.
And with very, very minimal damage. I'm not saying we will, or we even should. But if we clean house in the front office and we decide, fine.
Oh, so that's where the poison pill is after this year.
Yep. So we have until March.
So there is an extremely big decision weighing on Stephen Ross, because it's not just your GM and your coach, it's your quarterback too.
Yep. And it's not like a clean cut. I mean, we're still be on the hook for, I think it's $38 million next year, or
anything less than 50 is impressive, given the contract.
And then it's 8 and 7 for the remaining 4 years of his contract, which is
just a signing bonus, right? Yeah, right. I think So okay, they have to make a decision about Tua. Now, I don't know if either of us are equipped to say whether or not we would keep him without knowing who the next coach is going to be.
We can't. But
there's no way
now. I don't see a better option. Put it to you that way.
Certainly not. Nobody in the draft.
Right. I mean, any of the top teams aren't going to trade their quarterback.
Right. Nobody's trading a quarterback. I love when fans do that. Why don't we trade for Mahomes? Who the hell is trading Mahomes?
You couldn't give them. We wouldn't have a first round pick forever.
No.
In perpetuity.
And they still wouldn't do it. This isn't back in the Ricky Williams days where you could just trade your whole draft for one guy.
That's crazy.
Like Ditka, then go play golf. Yeah. Okay, let's look at. There's two guys coming off. We've talked about these guys before. They are free agents after this year. Clean cut UDFAs. They're not UDFAs. UFAs. Unrestricted free agent. UFAs.
UFRAs. Whatever.
Why do I get into acronyms?
I don't know.
I could have just said unrestricted free agents. All right, whatever. Javon Holland and Jalen Phillips are the two.
Yep.
In the past, I've suggested that I would more than likely not keep either of them. As we've gone through the season, nothing they've done has proven. I mean, Phillips is hurt again, and Holland has played
like
badly.
Yep.
So to me, what has happened since week 3 or whatever when we predicted these things has just solidified my opinion that I don't want to keep either of them. Jalen Phillips is a fantastic story, but he can't stay on the field.
When he's on the field, he's a menace, right?
On the field, he's an absolute menace. But if you're not there, you're not there.
And then
but we also traded for availability. But we also traded for another guy who's in the same boat in Bradley Chubb, and is the reason that Denver didn't re-sign him, or traded him. I mean, teams don't trade away good pass rushers if they're available all the time and wreaking havoc.
Sure don't.
So if you're asking me, do I want to pay Jalen Phillips what it's going to take to keep him? Likely $30 million a season, I would guess.
Not quite.
25.
You could probably get him under. I think you could realistically get Jalen Phillips 20 a year.
I think the money matters a lot. Does his representation feel like he should be paid like Max Crosby, or do they feel like he should be paid like a mid-tier pass rusher?
Emmanuel Ogbah.
Right.
No, I think not that you asked. My opinion on this. Yeah, my opinion on this is Holland's out the door. He's going to be $90+ million, right?
You can't. I just don't believe in paying safeties, dude.
I love Javon Holland. I think he's awesome, but he's played like crap. What's troubling with Holland is this is a contract year for him, for all intents and purposes, and you don't show up of all years to not show up.
Yeah,
like bye. Okay, we can. Spoiler alert: I do mock drafts every other week. I don't share them with anybody, but it's my passion. I have us taking a very, very good safety in round 1. So, Holland's gone, in my opinion. Now, Phillips is a different story because I think, to your point, the best ability is availability, right? And
it's your point that you made for me, actually.
Yes. Well, we're a team, buddy. I'm trying to give you credit. and I think it, to your point, money is going to matter, right? Where does he slot in, right? I mean, if he's going to do, I don't want to call it a team friendly deal, but understand that he's never been healthy for a full season. I don't think ever, as he's in a Miami Dolphins jersey.
Never.
Nope. Okay. Take that into account. Yes. When you are on the field, you're probably a top. If he was fully healthy all season, where would you rank him? Assuming he gets double-digit sacks, which is not unheard of, right?
Yeah, I'd pay him as a top 5 pass rusher.
Right. So he's going to want top 5 pass rusher money. We're going to want to pay him, dude, you can't stay healthy money. So depending on if it's a reasonable ask, I think we should re-sign him, because I think him and Chop, oh boy, oh brother, right? That's a scary tandem. But if he's gonna plant his flag in the sand and say, no, I don't care if I'm on the field, you're paying me what I feel like I'm owed, bye. And we lose both of them.
Yeah.
Which sucks, because we had a chance to trade Javon Holland this offseason and we said no. So we're gonna lose him for nothing, I think.
So Phillips to me would be the least likely surprise if we decide to keep him, because pass rushers are hard to come by, and even injured ones get paid a lot of the time.
Yep.
JPP got paid many, many years after blowing up his own hand. Continued to get paid.
With a firework.
With a firework, right?
Insane.
Holland to me, I have the only instance I can think of, and most teams do not pay their safeties. And we've seen such big name safeties get shown the door.
But they get big contracts in the last 2 off seasons. Safeties
for the next team.
Yeah.
I remember Eric Waddle, one of the greatest safeties we've ever watched, and the Chargers were like,
bye.
Right? The only one I can really remember backfiring, and maybe this is recency bias because it just happened, was Xavier McKinney leaving the Giants. He goes to Green Bay, and he leads the league in interceptions. Right?
Yeah, Budda Baker deserved every penny that he got. That dude's a menace.
Yeah, he's a menace for sure. I just don't believe in paying safeties, though. I think, to me, it's just not one of the important positions that you pay. And I think defensive ends, so that if we pay Phillips, that's why I don't care that much. Defensive ends are huge. Your quarterback is huge. Your offensive line is huge. Everywhere else, I feel like if you want to skimp, okay.
Yep. I'm with you 1,000%. That's why I think, spoiler alert to our future show, I think Tyreek Hill needs to go. I was
just going to bring him up. Tyreek, what do we do with Tyreek? So we're getting towards the back half of his contract with us, even though I think he just signed like a 1-year extension or something like that.
Yeah, but for money purposes, so he could be a top 3 paid wide receiver in the league.
Right. I don't think it's an egregious cap hit. I don't have those numbers in front of me.
If we trade him too, it's hardly anything.
So I have a really hard time saying that I would trade Tyreek Hill. I know that this has been a really down year for him. And I think so much of my opinion on this would be who is the coach, right? Mm-hmm. If it's McDaniel still, I might be more likely to trade him. Because
that's fair. He doesn't use them.
He doesn't. I mean, we had 9 targets this past week. It was quite obvious it was a focus to get him the ball. But to me, Tyreek, in my mind, is still one of the top 3 players in the NFL.
Hands down, which is why I think now is the time to trade him, right? I am fully on it. This is not maybe not. For me, you trade Tyreek Hill this offseason and you don't look back, right? Because I think you can get the best haul. Now, he is a depreciating value, so we're not going to get what we paid for him from Kansas City. But
what did they just give up for Devontae? The Jets.
I have no clue.
All right, let me look that up while you go.
2nd and a 4th, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, you go and I'll look that up.
I think no matter who the head coach is, right, we have too much similarity on this team, right? And this goes back to my comment about the Green Bay, about being envious, because they have a Jalen Waddle type. They have a kind of a bigger body, fast wide receiver that can win those 50-50 in is it Jalen Reed? No. Is that his name? Jalen Reed? Jaden Reed.
Yep.
Right. I think, in my opinion, right, if from the couch, if I'm the couch GM of the Miami Dolphins, you trade Tyreek Hill, you try to get a 1st and a later round pick if you can. If not, you get a couple seconds and a play or whatever. You figure it out, right? You get what you can. You get them off the roster because we have too much similarity, right? So you have 2 players that are short and that are fast, really fast. I mean, super fast. And Tyreek Hill is much twitchier than Jalen Waddle. Mm-hmm. But I think they are still very, very similar players, right? I think if you take Tyreek Hill out of the equation, you can slot Jalen Waddle into his routes and not really genuinely, assuming Jalen Waddle is playing up to his potential, see a massive drop-off. Not going to be the same player by any stretch because, to your point, Hill is a top 2 wide receiver, top 3 wide receiver in this league, and it's not even a question.
I mean, I think it's in the top 10 of players, just players,
general,
like
right?
Yeah,
not even positional, but
right,
overall.
just all players. Yeah.
But I think you then turn around and not only use the assets that you get in return, which will be a couple draft picks, maybe more, and then a compensatory pick potentially, right? If
Correct.
he ends up not wearing. Wait, no, that's only if you let him.
Only if you let him go. Yeah,
that's
never
mind. Sorry, so no comp pick, but you get my point. And then you add a different type of player, so you get a bigger bodied starter, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 that is completely polar opposite of what you have in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill.
Mm-hmm.
You get that 6'2", 6'3" guy that can run fast, that can catch. So a higher end draft pick, for example, or you pay or you trade or you do something to get somebody in this building that can give you some different options on offense. So you're not consistently having to throw fades to Tyreek Hill, right? I think that, and not to mention the cap savings, right? Because you're no longer paying $30 million plus for a wide receiver who's getting targeted 4 times a game on average, right?
So it was a 3rd round pick for Devontae Adams. With conditional, it could be a 2nd if he made an All-Pro, which is not going to happen. So
I still think you can get a 1st for Tyreek Hill, depending on the team.
I think if you could get a 1st, you got to do it. Mm-hmm. I just think the chances are pretty slim. I think you're looking at a 2nd. A low 2nd, maybe a high 3rd.
You just said and I agree with you that he's a top 10 player.
That doesn't mean that teams are going to be willing to trade for him, though.
I just think you get a contender, right? Or somebody, even like, not that you would ever trade him in division, but I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying that this would happen or that we want this to happen, but a team like the Patriots, who have a young rookie quarterback, who have no weapons. You imagine a team like that, Bo Nix, send him to Denver. Give Bo Nix Tyreek Hill. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
You got to find a GM who's willing to wheel and deal. I mean, my number one call would be Philly if they didn't already have 2 studs at wide receiver.
Yeah.
But
I'd call it Tennessee.
I mean, if we can make that happen and then sign a guy who's unhappy like a T. Higgins, I mean, I think...
Dude, I would be thrilled to swap those 2. Not because I think T. Higgins is a better player.
No, but he's different.
Hill, but he's different.
And there's no doubt that Grier and his team are thinking about this. I mean, what are they doing all offseason other than this, right? I mean, or all season, I mean, obviously they're picking up but okay.
Or maybe swap with Cincinnati. Get Jamar Chase in here.
I mean, he's another fast guy, but he's much bigger than Tyreek,
Right? I mean,
I don't think they're moving Chase, though.
I don't think they can afford to. I mean,
I think that would be stupid of them. They're downgrading on age. Okay, let's go.
Anyways,
two quick guys I just want to bring up. Jonnu, I think we both agree we would like to re-sign him.
Absolutely.
Also, Cater is a free agent this offseason. I would love to see him get re-signed.
Me too, but I won't lose sleep if he doesn't.
Yeah, right. It was an undrafted free agent, so it is what it is.